Hey guys, welcome to the Little Black Dress Podcast. So, full disclosure, I have no idea what I'm doing. Brian just left with the three crazy boys, and he said, "You're gonna have some time. You need to record." I have no notes. I don't have anything. So this is, I guess this is just going to be off the cuff, which, I mean, I'm always pretty off the cuff if you've ever met me. There's like no structure. It really is amazing that I have been able to open a business from scratch. I wanted to introduce myself. So my name is Ashley Joves, pronounced Joves, not Joves, not Joves, Joves. It's my fault. I agreed to take on my husband's last name. My maiden name is Lagman, and I went to school. I went to dental school at NYU, and everyone was expecting to see a Jewish girl. And when I would introduce myself as Ashley Lagman, their jaws kind of dropped. But anyways, I digress. I wanted to welcome you to the Little Black Dress Podcast. So, what is the Little Black Dress Podcast? How did it come about? And why? Why another freaking podcast? So, just some backstory about me. I am a wife to my college sweetheart, Brian. We have three beautiful boys, beautiful and crazy and rambunctious, full of energy. Hudson is the oldest. He is turning 8 next month. Brady is my sweet cuddly boy. He just turned 6 in March. And Cody is our firecracker. He is our little surprise. It's not the stomach flu. Yes, I'm sure I'm gonna dive more into that as the episodes progress. But I'm a mom to 3 boys, so I am the only source of estrogen in my household. And I always wanted to have a community of women, like not just any women, but women who want more for their lives, women who love to support and empower each other, women who aren't scared of competition or challenges. And I started podcasting in 2017 on the Dental Marketers podcast, the Dental Marketer, aka Michael Arias. And something you may not know about me, or you may know, I started my own practice in Folsom, California, from scratch. And the reason why I guess that was so monumental, not monumental, everyone's doing a startup these days, but in my area, there are a ton of dentists. My demographics are, at the time that we opened, it was 1 in 660. So if you listen to any consultant, they will tell you that ideally you want your demographics to be 1 dentist for every 2,500 persons. So the odds were against me, but I did it anyway. I was looking for a practice for a while to buy, and when nothing came to the market that I actually thought was worth their purchase price, I felt really defeated. And I told my husband's name is Brian. I told him and say, like, I guess it's just not in the cards for me. It was always my dream to be a business owner, and I would never have opened my own practice if it wasn't for Brian. And it's been a crazy ride. And so at the time that I announced to, I thought were just my friends and family, I did a little Facebook live video from my car at the parking lot of this really old building that is now a smiling company. I sat and I remember just feeling so much fear about pushing the record button. And my husband was the one who said, like, you just finally have to announce it. And if you haven't listened to other episodes that I've done, I actually talk about probably the most humiliating day of my life. Those are like dramatic words. I'm pretty dramatic, but it was actually a really awful day because the associateship that I was working at, the associateship that I hated. I would drive to work and literally my stomach would just be in knots because I knew that at any given moment I could just start crying. It was not a very good work environment, but I knew that we had just closed on this building in Folsom, that the end was in sight, and that I needed to save up enough money just in case I didn't have patients through the door from day one. So I am going in so many tangents, you guys. This is how my mind works. It's very stream of consciousness. So just bear with me. I promise I'm going to get to a point, or maybe the point is this is the point. I am a random squirrel as they come. So my assistant the night before, in 2017, the night before I was going to release that Facebook video, she had messaged me. We were very close. She had messaged me. She said, "Hey, Dr. Joves, I just want to let you know that they blocked off the first 3 hours of your schedule. Do you know anything about that?" And I responded that I kind of had a feeling what was about to happen. But I told her, no, I never asked them to block it, but we'll just see what happens. So I drove into work that day knowing that I was going to be let go. And I drove in anyway. I should have just called in sick. No, it's good. Everything that happens to us is actually for us. We just need to write it out. So I went in and I immediately got fired, and it was the most humiliating experience because it was one of those situations where you knew that you were not at fault. And okay, I'll just tell you guys. I'll just tell you the situation. Oh my gosh, this is how I am going to put an hour of content into the first episode. Next time, I promise. Well, no, I can't say that. I will be more structured, but my mind goes a million miles a minute, as you can tell, and I have no idea where I was going with. My computer just crapped out. Sorry. Where did you go? I think my computer just shut down. Oh, no, it's still there. Okay. At 8 minutes, I'm going to edit that out. Writing that down right now. So I'll tell you the backstory, guys. You're gonna know all the juicy details of my life. I was called in to do a hygiene exam on this teenage boy. He had an over-retained primary tooth that unfortunately he could not get out, even though it was loose. I think it was hanging by a thread on his gums, and the hygienist basically said, "Hey, Dr. Joves, our patient, Dr. So-and-so, everyone's busy. He normally sees this doctor, but he is in a lot of pain. He has a baby tooth that is very stubborn and won't come out, and it's basically tugging at his gums. Like, is there anything that we can do about it?" And I go in, I was like, yeah, of course. Like, we can't let a patient leave the office if they're in pain, like, without doing something. So I went in. And I said, I took a look at the tooth. This kid is, I don't know, he's like 13 years old. And I made a comment to the hygienist, and I just said, oh my gosh, like, that tooth is so wiggly. I'm sure you could even take it out during the cleaning. And I laughed. Like, how many times, docs, how many times have we gone in and said, like, oh yeah, that tooth may come out? Because it may come out. It was a complete joke. And I thought nothing of it because my personality is I am playful in the office. And this work environment did not support laughter. Like, you were a machine, you were a robot, you had scripts that you had to recite verbatim, and I was not their cookie cutter definition of what a doctor, quote unquote, should act like. And some backstory, they knew that I had always wanted my own practice, and when I started to get really close to the staff and the patients, like, the patients started to request me, I think that was seen as a threat. And I know that for a fact because I even approached the main doctor about, like, hey, I know that you know that I want my own practice. If and when I do decide to open, I plan on being in Folsom, which is where my family is. Well, not really family. I have, like, in-laws here. That's it. Would you be open to mentorship? And being that she is a woman, I thought that I would have that we would have that relationship where she would like to foster growth in the next generation as women supporting women. She was on her, like, she was approaching retirement, and also Folsom is 30 minutes away from her office. So I thought, like, yeah, why not ask? You never know unless you ask. And honestly, when she said, absolutely not, I will not mentor you, and I don't want patients leaving my practice to go see you. So it was like, I guess she saw me as a threat. So I guess ever since that moment, it was a downward spiral of public humiliation. Like, I would be I would be spoken to condescendingly in front of the team. And it was just humiliating. And I put up with it. I bit my tongue so much because all I wanted was to have enough savings so that, like I said, if my startup, if it didn't take off as quickly as I needed it to, that I would have a cushion. But anyway, so I was called in that day. I was sat down in front of the owner doc and in front of the office manager, who actually I became really close with also, and just berated. Like, in my entire 40 plus years of practice, I have never in my life been in this situation where I had to let another doctor go. Blah, blah, blah. All these things. And then she said, did you instruct the hygienist to extract this tooth? I could not even... I think I picked my mouth up off the floor. Like, it's like, no. And as soon as I said anything, I was immediately shut down and I wasn't allowed to speak. The office manager, we stood up. The office manager escorted me to my desk watched me while I removed all my belongings, and then escorted me not just out of the building, but all the way into my car until she saw that I put my seatbelt on and turned the car on. I was not allowed to say bye to any of the team members who I had grown close with since I had been working there for about 9 months. I had no ability to say bye to any patients. It was a complete walk of shame into my car. And I remember backing up out of the driveway, and like I said, my commute was about 30 minutes. I backed up and I got on the freeway, and I am a mess. Like, I have tears just uncontrollably streaming down my face because I had just been utterly humiliated. And I know that this was the scapegoat excuse. The scapegoat excuse was I had instructed a hygienist to perform duties outside of her scope, and that is illegal. And obviously we know the truth, that I would never tell a hygienist to extract a tooth. Like, I mean, that it's just ridiculous. Like, I was a threat that needed to be removed from the practice. I remember getting on the phone while I was trying to compose myself, and I got on the phone with my husband, who, thank goodness, well, actually, no, I texted him right away. I texted him, I got fired. I'm a mess, and I'm driving home. And he texted and he said, I'm with patients. I will call you as soon as I can. So I'm on the freeway, and then he calls me back. Brian calls me back. And then I tell Brian, like, just how awful the situation was, how I felt so small. Like, there is, to let someone have that power over you, to not be able to be heard, to not be able to let anything out at the moment, especially when you know that what they're telling you is a complete lie. I just felt so small. Like my presence. I felt like, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, those like little kids, like when they zap and their dad is like trying to find them, and they're there and they're yelling like, Dad, I'm here. That's what I felt like. And Brian, and now I'm pretty much sobbing in my car at this point. Brian, he's amazing. He really is. And honey, I know you're listening to this. He told me, like, you know what? You need to get on video, and you need to finally tell our friends and family that you're opening your own practice. So, and I told him, I said, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, what is this Facebook Live? And he's like, oh, it's like this thing on Facebook. Because at that point, social media was not my thing. Like, I would occasionally post photos of our family on there, but I had no idea what Facebook Live was. So he's like, you just need to do it. It'll be cathartic for you. And I told him that I was shy. I know that Judy and Colin and anyone who is in my office is probably laughing at that statement. But it's true. Like, I did not want to be on video. My eyes were already swollen. I had been crying. It really felt like this was probably one of the worst days of my professional life. Like, how could I go through this much schooling? How could I have earned my doctorate degree just like she had and felt like I had accomplished nothing? How could I be now in 9 years of practice, or I think about 9 years of practice, yeah, and still not be where I wanted to be professionally? Like, at that moment, I was feeling all of the self-pity, like all of the small talk, all of the things that you say to yourself that you know you would never tell your best friend. Those were all of my thoughts. And for whatever reason, like I remember, I think I was already on autopilot, because I ended up, no matter how much I was resisting going on video and telling Brian that I was never going to do that, no matter all of that, I found myself parked in the parking lot of the building that we had just closed on. Like we closed on this building about a week before, and then I was sitting in the parking lot, and I'm like, you know what, fuck it. Sorry, this is gonna get an explicit rating, I'm sure. This is a fuck it. Like I don't even care. Like I don't know who's on Facebook. I'm barely on this thing. If my friends and my family see me cry, that's like, it is what it is. And I have this thing about always appearing like perfect. Like I want my makeup to be perfect. I want my hair to be perfect. And I'm going to dive deep into that in later episodes, I'm sure. So the thought of crying on video, that normally if it had been any other day, it would have never happened. And I remember just sitting in my car and pushing that record button on Facebook Live and then just talking. And I think at that moment it had solidified this culmination of everything that I had been through to get to this point. I had always wanted my own practice, and I never, like, I followed Brian around for like med school and residency. I'm gonna get tissues, I'll be right back. Med school and residency, and then fellowship. And it was always like, okay, what's next for Brian? And then after Brian was done, we were in LA, and I had just given birth to Brady. He was 3 months old when we moved to LA. I stayed at home for 15 months, and as much as I thought that it was going to be this amazing experience bonding with Hudson and Brady, and how perfect it was going to be, because I was going to go to the farmer's market and have this stroller and this ergo baby and take walks around Brentwood and cook homemade meals for my husband, who I'm sure is going to be tired from seeing patients. Like, that is the image that I had in my head, and that is not what happened. Like, on most days it was did I shower today? I always brush my teeth, because but it just, I knew that being a stay-at-home mom was probably the hardest job ever. So hats off to you ladies if you are listening to this and you're at home. Like, it is the hardest, most non-rewarded profession one can have. Like, you don't get a break. And it was during that time of staying at home, and when the kids were napping, I would just write. I wrote my business plan for my office. So I'm back to my, sorry, I'm like jumping around, back to the Facebook Live. Like, that video went, so once I just started talking, it, because it was the culmination of everything that especially that humiliation of being fired like that, I couldn't help but just break down on camera. And I stopped recording, and I talked about the fear, like how scary it was to open this practice where they didn't need another dentist, where the numbers just did not support a startup. And now I had taken out all these loans to not just start this practice, but to also purchase the building. And like, what did I do? Like, how did I screw this up? Like, how, obviously, if I could be yelled at like that, like I felt like I was nothing. And that is where the emotions came from. That is, so if you don't know what I'm talking about, there's a Facebook Live video that I still to this day can't watch. Like, it brings back so many memories, but also it just reminds me of this place that I was in emotionally, that I wasn't ready to share that side of me with the world. And when I had pressed end, I thought, okay, well, that shit sucked. Like, I can't believe I just cried on video. But you know what? It's okay, because it's just the friends and the family. No one's really going to see this. Oh my gosh, guys. I had no idea what was going to happen next. And I saw my phone, and then notification after notification after notification of all these people that are just like jumping on, like messaging about this Facebook Live, sharing it to their feeds. It was surreal. And the first thing that I thought of was, holy shit, everyone has seen me ugly cry. That was literally my first thought. Like, this fucking sucks. Like, I don't want to be known as the girl who ugly cries. And I actually was supposed to, right the day before that video came out, I was getting ready to leave for LA. I was in this implant continuum. I was flying back and forth to LA. So I jumped on a plane and I landed. And when I got back to my hotel, Brian calls me. He's like, your video has been seen almost 5,000 times. And my heart sank. I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, I don't know. It's crazy. Like, people are rooting for you. And 28 minutes in, guys, 28 minutes, and I'm just telling like the genesis of all of this. Like, so that video was what got me on Howard Ferrand's podcast, and then Michael Arias, the dental marketer, he messaged me and he's like, I saw your video, I want to interview you. And then we did. It was like the start of something it was the start of storytelling, because he told me, like, we wrapped and he said, what if we could do this, not just like once, but what if you could share your story weekly, and we could potentially start something. And I told him, I said, well, I don't really know what you have in store, but I'm all in. Like, if by me sharing my story as it's happening in real time can help anybody, then I'm all for it. And that is how the Making of podcast started. And many of you have been listening since then. And I talk about everything. Like, it was the best 3 years of just sharing the highs and lows of practice ownership, talking about the first time I had to fire someone, talking about worrying about, if patients are going to walk through the door, worrying about expectations. And similarly, at the same time, I wanted to have a community of docs who I could connect with. And that is how the Making of a Dental Startup formed. And because I didn't find a Facebook group that catered to just dental startups. And most recently, the Dental Friends with Benefits podcast. So I love George, and whenever we would record, we recorded a few times before, whenever we would record, it was always such a good time. And after we recorded last year, I told him, I was like, George, why don't we just continue to do this? Like, why can't we just create a platform for us to talk about all the things that are on our minds, life related, business related, anything. And it'll be like a happy hour with friends. George loved the idea, and that is how we started Dental Friends with Benefits. And every week we talked about everything. So that brings me to you guys. If you have been listening to the Dental Friends with Benefits, you know that I have shared so much of myself on there. And it was very cathartic. Like, I think I'll reiterate what George says. Like, you have to forget that people are listening, because it's very hard to put yourself out there. And I did. Is it bared? Bore. I bared my heart. Especially in like the beginning episodes. Actually, yeah, towards the beginning episodes, it was me sharing how, like, even though from the outside perspective, from what you see on social media, it's always laughter and smiles. Like, there was always a story behind the smile. And that is what I wanted everyone to understand. And I talked about relationships that I have in my life that aren't 100%. And it was very hard for me to be that vulnerable. And like, I know that when you, like, for instance, if you're a business owner and you receive a 1-star review on Yelp or Google, it's easy for us to say, well, you know what, that person doesn't know me. Like, it is what it is. Like, it's fine. Like, that's not the real me. Like, after a few, a couple months ago, I received some some feedback, and it wasn't the nicest feedback. It was, okay, I'm just gonna tell you, it was just someone making a remark that I am playing the victim because I'm craving sympathy. And it is harder for me to be the hero in my own life, and it's harder for me to take action, blah, 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 blah. And I think that feedback kind of sent me down this spiral path, because one, I deal with perfectionism, just like so many of us. I already get worked up by, like, any kind of negative feedback, but to have your heart exposed like I did on this podcast, to have all of my innermost thoughts, all of the discussions that I've had with George, not just about, like, my marriage, motherhood, my relationship with my mom, all the things that keep me up at night, I laid it all out there. And the reason for it was to let you guys know that if you were in the same situation, that you weren't alone. Like, I wanted to open myself up to that, to hopefully help anyone else listening. And so that's what I did. And it has been amazing to connect with all of you guys. And I'm sure most of you are listening right now. Like, I have loved meeting you in real life, sometimes in the restrooms at conferences, sometimes at random meetups, sometimes just, gosh, it's just been pure joy is how I can describe it when you message me, when you write to me, and you tell me that the things that I'm talking about, that I'm not alone. I can't even tell you, like we get so worked up in our heads about the things that aren't going well in our lives. And I put it out there, and that feedback where I just felt like judged, like it felt like a stab in the heart. Like I needed to take a step back, because like when you have maximum vulnerability, you have maximum hurt. And even though all of the messages and all of the connections that I had built with this amazing community, like was something that I wanted to continue at that time, I had to remove myself from that place, because I went through like kind of a dark place, guys. I'm not gonna lie. I see a therapist, and I brought it to my therapy sessions every week, and because it made me go down this rabbit hole of, like, you put yourself out there, you set yourself up for any kind of critique or negative feedback. This isn't a safe place to do that anymore. Why did I ever think that this was a safe place? And then it brought me back to all the areas of my life, all the areas of my childhood where I felt maximum exposure and vulnerability, and it wasn't safe. And I'm going to dive deep into that, I'm sure, in the upcoming episodes. But this is why I took a step back. I texted George and I said, you know what, George, like I just need some time. I don't feel like this place is the right outlet or platform for me at the moment. Like it's kind of sent me through this loop. And George, he texted back. He's like, you know what, take as much time as you need. And I'll just record. And that was the episode that you guys listened to, talking about like why I had been absent. And it's so amazing because, well, it's amazing on so many levels. When I told my husband about the feedback, his response to me was, well, what is your why? Like, why are you doing this? Like, what is your ultimate goal? And my ultimate goal was to always share a part of me, so that if you are in the same place that I'm in, that you're not feeling alone. Like, it was connection, it was community, it was having a voice for women in this industry. And the feedback that I received, while it wasn't the greatest, it was also, I think it was like the straw that broke the camel's back, because towards the end of Dental Friends with Benefits, the format had changed, and it became, instead of George and me talking about like our our happy hour conversations and all the things that we think about on a day-to-day basis, he had proposed to me, he had pitched to me this idea of Dental Friends with Benefits version 2.0. I don't know if you guys remember that. And that is when he said, like, I want it to be more friends. Like, I'm going to invite all the guys from shared practices. So I said, okay. And I blame myself because at that time, I didn't speak up a lot about the direction of the show. I didn't speak up about, like, I should have said, you know what, George, like, I don't want to change the format. I like this format. I like that it's just the two of us, two friends connecting about the things that we think about. But I didn't. And that's my bad. And I find in so many areas of my life I'm not speaking up more. And as much as I love the shared practices guys and Johnum, hi Johnum, I hope you're listening. As much as I love that, like, they were really fun, it changed the direction of the podcast. Like, now this was no longer a place where I felt like, do we even talk about that there? Like, this wasn't my outlet anymore. This wasn't the place where I felt I had the maximum connection with you guys, the community, the Dental Friends with Benefits community. And there was even an episode where I think it was George and Matt, and they were talking about how, like, Matt was pretty vocal about just not wanting the hard stuff. And then, like, George talked about, yeah, like, we've had feedback about the hard stuff and the good stuff, blah, blah, blah. And I believe that I should have spoken up more. And I believe that I was the one who was getting all the feedback, because the feedback was from you guys. You guys, our tribe. You wrote to me novels about your own lives, about your own relationships with your mother, about how you struggle with parenthood. I read and read and read and read and read so many amazing stories that you guys shared with me. You opened yourselves up to me, and that I should have said, you know what, George, like, I've gotten all the feedback, and it's about the shit that we think about, that we don't talk about, that is really impacting our audience. I didn't speak up. I let them, like, keep it fun, keep it light. And then after that feedback, the negative feedback, it was just like, okay, it's time, guys. And it was time to move on from the show. And I went to Minneapolis. Well, I went to a conference in Vegas, and a few of you were there, and we talked about how a lot of you guys no longer feel like your voices are being represented, and a lot of you are women, and you had subsequently stopped listening to DFWB. And when I went to Minneapolis for the Shared Practices event, I think it really hit home when a few of you came up to me and talked to me about your experiences with the podcast. But when this particular person came up to me, and I won't name her, she said something to me that I won't forget. And she told me that one of the listeners of the show, who I haven't connected with, I don't think, basically cried, telling her that it was a shame that I stopped podcasting because it was the way that she felt that her voice was being shared. Like she didn't feel lonely in her thoughts. Like practice management and leadership and running a business and expectations and being a mom and being a wife, like all of those issues that keep us up at night, those were no longer being represented. So I'm going to cry again because I talked to my husband about this and I said, you know, I've been podcasting for a long time, since 2017, and it's always with a man, always under someone else's umbrella. What do you think about me just doing it on my own? And Brian, he's my biggest cheerleader. He said, I think you can walk on water. Like, I think you should absolutely do it on your own. And I have imposter syndrome. So I told him, I said, well, one, can I do it? Will I run out of topics? And why would anyone want to listen to me? Those are the things that go through my head, and my snot is running. And he said, it's exactly that reason why you need to do it. Because you don't think you can. So, welcome to the Little Black Dress Podcast, where we talk about all the things that keep us up at night. And, man, that's my story, guys. That is my story. I knew there were going to be tears. I didn't think it was going to be to this extent. I actually have Colin's husband's birthday to get to in like an hour. But I wanted to set up the tone for what's to come. Like, my goal is to interview you guys, either anonymously or not. I want to share the stories that bring us together. I want to share the stories of empowerment and vulnerability, because I believe those are what make us beautiful. And the little black dress is a concept that I thought of while I was getting ready for work. And I couldn't describe any other icon that describes our tribe of women more. The black dress, the little black dress, when you put it on, you feel confident and radiant and beautiful and sexy and desired. And you're also hanging out with your best girlfriends, having the Cosmo, having all the cocktails, all the glasses of wine, all of those conversations that need to be had. I don't want this to be a platform where we're just growing. I want depth, not breadth. So we have a community on Facebook where I invite you to join and go introduce yourselves. I think we have an amazing tribe of women that we can all learn from. And my goal for this is to share parts of my life for you to see behind the scenes, but also to showcase your stories. I love the stories. I love the stories that make us human and beautiful. And I can't wait to get to know you guys. I can't wait to get this out there. And I can't wait to form this community of all of you guys who have been supporting me, who have been supporting Smiling Company, and and to my amazing team, Colin, Judy, everyone at Smile & Co. When I told them that I wanted to do this podcast, Dr. Tiffany, I told them I wanted to do this podcast, and I had the name. They were stoked. They purchased the domain. They got, they started looking up like how to start a podcast. So, how to start a podcast, how to create a women's mastermind, how to do all the things. I'm learning all of that with you guys. So if you are on board, I can't wait. I can't wait to grow with you and meet all of you in person. And that's my why, guys. So 50 minutes in, my first solo episode, a lot of tears later, and I'm excited for what's to come. And man, Little Black Dress community, not just for dentists, for any woman, not just moms, for any woman. We're going to talk about all the hard things, and I can't wait. I can't wait to share them with you. Have an amazing day, guys. Thank you for listening.